Welcome, everybody, to another week of Wealth Wisdom, where we're helping you build wealth and legacy.
Companies are like an organism trying to survive.
It's always a risk when you're investing in a company that's purely tied to someone's brand.
45% of Americans have gone into debt for a Disney trip. All right, welcome back to another episode of Wealth Wisdom by Foxhill Wealth Management. Today, we're talking about something that could be completely game-changing for you in your financial future. How to double your earnings this year in your savings this year. Now, I know you're thinking doubling your savings sounds impossible, but with interest rates where they are today, some strategic moves and a few behavioral changes, it's absolutely possible for you and many others. Whether you're starting with $1,000 or $100,000, the principles we're covering today can dramatically accelerate your wealth building. So we're going to break down all the math, show you the strategies, give you a step-by-step play to make 2025 your best savings year ever. But first, let's dive into rapid fire news, followed by the main topic, and then we'll get into one of our portfolio holdings at the end of the show. Bill, you want to get into it? We got rapid fire news this week. Bill, we've got people are still saying 2 rate cuts. I mean, the Fed, we talked about the Fed every week. They are always in headlines. Do you think we'll have the 2 rate cuts? Do you think that'll hold true, or do you think Powell will stay stubbornly entrenched in his wait and see?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see anything till the fall, because I just think that, and I know it's not supposed to be kind of intertwined with the market and things like that, but with the market going the way it is, and where the job reports seem to be, you know what I mean, coming out pretty strong. I'm going to keep coming back to that. I think if the job reports are strong, even if the market kind of stays flat, I think they're going to hold off as long as possible, because even though inflation's been around 2.4%, 2.1, 2.5, right, as it's coming in, they keep saying that 2% is the number they're looking for. And I know that Powell will probably want to take a little breather with the tariffs and stuff like that, see how that plays out and see how that affects inflation. So he was going to kind of wait, give that 60, 90 days to see where the numbers come out and how that affects things. And then from there, he'd probably make a decision on whether he's going to do, but I expect to see a 25 basis point cut in September.
Okay. 1 for the year. Eric,
political pressure. And then maybe later on. But I know that's the first time I think we're going to see it. And when we do, I don't think it's going to be a 50 point. I think it's going to be a 25.
25. All right, cool. The political pressure is, insane, right? You've got Trump came out just yesterday. I think it was just yesterday. And they had a huge board and they showed at the press conference all the other countries that have lower rates than the United States. He was saying, hey, we should be at 1 or 2%. There's serious political pressure. Eric, they also announced $80 billion in tariff income. So do you think we'll have 1 or 2 cuts? What do you think?
Still the 2. I think.
Okay.
I think Powell doesn't care. He doesn't care about that. He doesn't care what Europe's doing. I mean, typically the U.S. has been slightly above Europe for rates, so it makes sense where they are. Yeah, the one thing he's monitoring closely, right, is the consumer price index, which ticked up for the first time in 4 months. It was at 2.3% year over year. Then it bumped up to 2.4. Is that the effects of the tariffs starting to push inflation rates a little bit higher? We'll see. That's what he's waiting on. Next 2 months will be the big indicator. But this is the stuff that's it's a healthy economy. It's growing. That's why they need to keep rates a little higher and stop it from getting too hot. Europe doesn't have that same issue.
Yeah. Well, the good thing for everyone listening and on topic with the show is that because of the high rates, you've got high yield savings accounts are higher right now. So it's a great thing for savers. I think we've talked about on other episodes having a short-term amount of money, in a savings account. I looked around the internet just in prep for the show. Average rates for high yield savings accounts 4% average, maybe 4.3.
We're getting 4 at Altruist, which is great. And if the inflation rate is 2.4%, you're getting that extra 1.5% right there. That's great. So it's a great spot to park your short-term money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're
And
not
then
actually losing money
No.
as it sits there.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got your money, short-term money parked in a big bank, a checking account especially, you're getting squat. You're getting
Yeah.
nothing. And then CD rates, you can get a little higher rate, 4.25% current bond yields, 4.3 on average. So it's still good for saving. And that's one of the things we'll talk about. So if rates do start to cut, those numbers will go down. But are you locked into those? If that's a floating rate for everyone
No,
listening.
yeah, because Altruist was at 4.5 at one point, for instance.
Yeah.
But so they're basically just buying short-term treasuries with that money you're putting in there. So it's going to go down.
Yeah,
As rates
market.
go down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. You have instant liquidity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
no. The only thing that really ties you down in any nature is just to transfer, right? So if you needed money that afternoon, you're not going to get it. It takes a day to transfer it over. A lot of those 24, maybe 48 hours, depending on the online bank or something like that. But yeah, for the most part, very, very, very liquid.
Okay, cool. And then I mean, the market's up at 5.7% as of right now of this recording. So we've got not too shabby. I think a lot of investors would be pretty happy with that performance for the S&P 500 right now. Strong indicators overall.
Especially given where we were right back in April.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who said that the sky is falling and sell everything. So there's an off topic. There was an interesting article. Most foreign countries have been net buyers of American stocks since that dip, that bottom, which is very, very telling how strong the U.S. economy is and how they think it is.
That is, especially with how much the U.S. dollar has fallen. I think it's fallen 10% since the start of the year. So, which actually would make it more attractive, right? Because then now they're getting a little savings on the currency, right? No, it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think it's still the U.S. is still the best game in town.
That was every headline was is this the end of American exceptionalism? Is all the money flowing to Europe right now?
Right.
And I was like, no. There's
At
no
the
way.
time, there was especially
Yeah.
European defense stocks were saying, that was a big narrative as well.
Yeah, I mean, there has been a significant, outflow of capital to Europe and things like that.
Yeah.
China's done really well, right? But China they were in a really, really rough place. They kind of did a lot of stimulus, did a lot of, internal spending and things like that, which just kind of helped their market out, especially from where it was, right? There was a lot of talk about how their real estate was in such rough shape, going through a lot of turmoil. That's
We
kind
wrote
of
about that.
Population rate decline.
And their tech
High
and
unemployment
stuff
rate.
has really come back. So there's a lot of things that have done really well there, but you still, different laws and things like that of how that works. We know the U.S. is really set up very, very pro-business and likes to keep their business very independent from their government, whereas China, you don't always know, right, what exactly is going on there. And then obviously Europe, different culture, right? They're more about sustainability than they are necessarily about growing. We've seen a little shift there, obviously, since the start of the year. Stuff is cyclical, but the U.S. still remains a very good place to be.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. All right, so let's get into the main topic of the show. So just setting expectations for just as we dive into this topic. What does doubling mean? So if you've got $500 a month currently and you're saving that $500 a month, doubling, you go to 1,000. If you have 10,000 saved, we're going to get to 20. So it's going to be different for everybody. Time horizon definitely matters. We're doubling in a year, doubling your savings rate. All right, so 3 pathways. Okay, we've got Eric. You've got the savings. Double your savings rate. So how can we do that? That could be done pretty easily, depending on where you're invested.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
how else can people do? Yeah.
Well, the double the savings rate, any financial planner will tell you that's the easiest thing that's in your control when it comes to making a financial plan, because we can't control what the market does, but we can control our living expenses. First thing you got to do is actually take the time to sit down, map out what you're spending money on, and see what you can cut. But you can easily double your savings rate. What was the second point? Double your account balance, Justin?
Yeah, so
Requires
if you
Hold on, I
combinations
want to
of
play
spending.
devil's advocate right now.
Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead, Bill. Yeah.
Double
Yeah.
your savings rate, so it's the most achievable, as we have here in the notes. So is that? I would say there's a lot of people who it's that would be very, very hard for it to do. To double, are you talking about the rate of return on what you have it in, or are you talking about actually saving more than double than what you currently are?
Oh, I read
So-
that as actually saving more, not just the rate. But go ahead, Justin. Sorry, I didn't know what.
Yeah, you could interpret it different ways. So if you double your savings, in the savings rate would be the percentage of savings coming into your account today.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think a lot of people have the ability to, if they're putting around a certain amount in each, they're just gonna double that number very quick? I mean, I feel like the majority
I
of
think-
lower middle class and even maybe upper middle class are, they're spending at a very prolific rate at the moment, and that would be tough to double that. They kind of have things set up.
I think a lot of people, if you sat down and actually took a look at what you're spending the money on, if you really discuss it, you'd be like, we don't need that. We actually don't need that either. I think you could find the savings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would tend to
Maybe
agree
that's
with
a
you.
privilege. That's probably a privileged take, but
I think
Wholeheartedly disagree with that take.
I think there's going to be levels. Like some people, if you're saving if we're talking rate and you're saving 0 today, it's easy to double it.
What's
Just
double
with
zero?
Yeah, there we go. Let's talk about math.
Bill,
for a
if you're
second.
not saving much at all, dude, it's only cutting a couple things.
Right.
So I guess if you're
Yeah,
like,
it's a
I'm
relative
not-
term.
yeah.
Relative
I was gonna
for everybody.
I think double is a very tough thing to do. Incrementally, I think you can do it, right?
Yeah.
But I do agree with Eric. I
You can
think
raise it by
most
20%
people.
you're doing. I think that's more achievable than saying double. Like, so if you're able to put away 600, 6,000, 50,000 a month, right? You know what I mean? It would be much more achievable, I think, to say, okay, listen, I can squeeze another 20%, right, out of what I'm doing right now.
Mhm.
I think doubling that number would be very difficult because that would cause for a drastic change in lifestyle, and I don't think people are necessarily willing to.
Well, I think that's what
lifestyle.
Eric's saying. If you sat down, right, and got really strict about what is going out every month,
Again, that's a huge change in lifestyle, and I don't
It is,
think people are
and I
willing
agree
to
with-
do that.
I that's what I'm saying. If people are willing, you have to be willing to do it. It's painful, but oftentimes short-term pain can amount to enormous, long-term gain overall. So if you're willing to do it, if you say, yeah, like we got to make these cuts, it's gonna suck.
Right.
I
Yeah.
agree. Most people don't want to do it.
But I think that pain is usually, or that gets brought upon when you are in a deficit or near, you know what I mean? Near deficit,
Sure.
something like that, right? Then you're willing to make those changes because you need to, because the immediate pain is going to cause, you know what I mean, that reaction to do that. But when you're already saving money, I think that's very difficult. You know what I mean? To say, well, I'm already saving money. Why do I have to make my life more difficult to
Yeah.
save more?
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my thing.
Do you think it's easier for people to double their income or just increase their income versus saving money? What's easier for most people?
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously saving money, right? Although they do say, right, when
I would argue differently.
there are those stats that it's like once you have a kid, you suddenly start making more money because like necessity, like
It's a fuel. Yeah, it's a fuels the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
Don't know.
Do you think so I think there's two sides of the
It
coin.
would
You
be
can save
easier to
more.
look at I would
get
say
more.
to look at your expenses. It's tough to just make more, right? Because
Yeah.
some of that is dictated by other people, right? If you go to your boss and they say you're not up for a raise for another like 6 months, we don't negotiate with you.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
so.
Well, let's get into that.
That's part of the play. It's just tough, you know what I mean? But for a lot of people, it's just their job. They're not going to allow them to get a raise like out of nowhere.
Sure. Yeah, I mean most people are happy with the raise they get. And it's maybe if they get anything and it's, nominal, it's 3% or something. I do think there are strategies that you can employ to negotiate a raise or a future raise, right? Like, hey, this is everything I've been doing. And that's why you have so many people hopping from job to job every year. You look at like the average resume, they've got 6 jobs in 6 years because you can, there's more leverage to jumping. But like, I would argue it's in the employer's best interest to keep talent that you've invested in long term to say, all right, so give your employer a chance to retain you rather than hop, you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's such
Training's
a pain.
very expensive.
Yeah, oh god, training people, the cost of a bad hire, right? You know what I mean, on that replacement. Like if it doesn't work out, I mean that's just months of just wasted time, wasted conversations. How do we help this person more to make it a fit? It's not a fit, you know what I mean? Like things like that. So that's definitely right. If you find a good employee, it's always in your best interest to do what you can to keep them. You know, so and that leverage, right? When you're
I think the first step is try to get your income up. I think if you've got a job, you know, negotiate with your boss. Number one, Eric. You know.
Yeah.
And then you can easily do that by saying, hey, I think you write a letter out, you know, and you say clearly, here's what's happening, you know, I've brought value to the company, where I've invested my time. And I mean, I think that allows someone to get really clear before going just to have a meeting with their boss.
Right. And the other thing too, Justin, is like a lot of times your boss or the person directly above them, like they're not always paying attention to what you're doing. You have to remind them all the things you're adding. They'll actually appreciate that too. Otherwise,
Sorry.
Otherwise, people just think everything's hunky dory, and they're just gonna.
I know, Eric, you've always been really good about that. I remember you talking to people who'd worked under you in the past and saying, "Hey, I want you to make a list of everything you do and get that to me before we come back." Right to the people you were working for, because I want them to know everything that you're doing, making sure they have a full, you know what I mean? They're fully aware of every last item. And I thought that was hearing that, you know what I mean, from afar. I was like, oh, that's a really good point. You know what I mean? To kind of have that stuff out, because you know, what's the old, if you assume, right, you make an ass out of you and me, you know what I mean? Things like that. Yeah. So never assume anything. I mean, that's one thing I would say, just working in financial services, stuff that is so commonplace for me that I think is like, oh, that person knows this. They know this. And then I start talking about, I have no idea what you're even talking about. And I'm like, oh my God, that is such a misstep on my part.
It's the curse of knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah, you just don't, you just got to realize people are so tied up in everything they have going on in their life and their job, and you know what I mean, things like that. They just don't have the time, right? So that's why they rely on their advisor, and that's why you want to make sure that you're explaining every little point, right, of what you do, so people have a full understanding of what's going on in your life, So
yeah. But what are, I mean, on the topic of increasing your earnings, you could also get a side hustle, right? You can get a part-time job, maybe in the gig economy as a server, like in hospitality. What you also, I think, invest in yourself, Bill. If maybe that's in line with number one, negotiating with your boss. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the gig economy stuff can be tough because I think people are, from a time perspective, are, pretty thin, right? Especially if you have a family and stuff like that. Like, when are you going to have the time necessarily to pick up the gig?
It's the weekends.
Again, that's a tough thing to do. Yeah. You come home from a 8, 9, 10-hour day, and you're like, oh, I'm going to now take on my second day. I don't know. I think that can be difficult, and then you want to kind of enjoy, your
It's definitely not easy. Yeah.
No, I know. That's the thing. So, I mean, maybe
you're going to lose your other relationships, too.
Yeah, there's things like that. I mean, but if you can figure out something that's high paying, that's worth your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Justin, the third point we put down in the notes, that to develop your skills further as a way to get your income up. That's the best way. Think about it. It could be school.
Oh, for sure.
It could be, honestly, part of the negotiating with the boss is about developing your skills further. Maybe initially you're going and asking, hey, what can I get better at? And it's, maybe it's not something as formal as education, but just like learning different skills within the job that you have. So that's the number one way, right?
And I think you can actually, in most cases, argue, and the employer, I think, will do this.
Yeah.
Have your employer pay for it.
Yeah.
That I like. I like that idea a lot. So
Yeah.
what else can you be bringing to the table? How many,
Right.
how many things can you handle? That versatility, right?
This is what I want to do. This is exactly what I will learn, and this is how it's going to bring more value to the company. Will you pay for it?
Oh, yeah.
And that could be a weekend conference. That could be a class. Whatever.
Yep.
A lot of examples.
Yeah. It's almost like a sports team, right? They talk about, hey, you may not be great at anything, but you can do so many things. I know you hear like Julian Edelman talk about how the more things you can do, right? He's like, oh, you need me. I mean, obviously, he had a very good career as a wide receiver, but, at certain points, he was playing defensive back when there were injuries. He's like, I can return punts, doing all these things, and basically coming in the league. He's like, I'll do anything to help the team win. You know what I mean? And, Bill Belichick was always big on that. The more you can do, the more valuable you become.
Oh, for sure.
Same thing in business, right?
MVP.
If there's more operational things you can take on, software is better, if you kind of can be that go-to person to kind of be a quick problem solver, you become invaluable, right? And once that happens, that's going to lead to increases in salary, and increases in bonuses, things like that.
All right, so let's dive into the other side of the coin is expenses. How can people, I know it's hard, a lot of people say the three major expenses are housing, transportation, meals. I think it's going to be tough to cut that. How else can they save money? If Eric, you're sitting down with someone today, what things are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, just from like going through my personal expenses with my wife, the two big things we looked at was it's the discretionary stuff, right? Obviously, utilities, housing, cars, can't really touch that, or like daycare, school. For us, it was our like media subscriptions. We both like to golf. That's expensive. And then dining out. Those are variable. You can choose to cook at home. You can choose to go to less expensive restaurants. And then the final thing was vacations. We're probably gonna do 3 vacations this year, and it's gonna be expensive. We were trying to do a bunch before, our family grows. But hey, we budgeted in, but that's something we can cut back on in the future.
Yeah,
but
that's a good one.
It all adds up. I definitely don't want to be vacationing too much each year.
It does, and I think there are levels to everything.
We don't want you having too much fun. No, I was going to say we don't want you having too much fun.
Bad for the company too. Yeah.
No, but honestly, like on those vacations, you try to do stuff that maybe again doesn't. There's a lot of free stuff to do that is very enjoyable. And maybe you don't stay at the really expensive resort. Maybe you try to stay at a cheaper Airbnb and then find like some cool, I don't know, some cool a free lake, right? Or you know what I mean, or rivers or something like that to go swimming. That stuff can be, and it's enjoyable, and you're outside and you're going for a hike to get there and things like that. That's things like that can be.
You can go local. You can go camping, right? You don't even have to do the Airbnb. You can go camping. Local, somewhere drivable, and stay outdoors.
My wife is cringing with that comment, but yeah.
I mean, talk about core memories unlocked with your kids. It'd be beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh no.
But there. I think that's true. Like if there are many levels, so like I think you can still enjoy time with your family on a vacation.
I do want to say this is kind of a pre-planning thing, not an immediate thing, but for housing, make sure you don't buy a house or that has more land than you can handle. In a house that's like too big, right? Because a bigger house is going to lead to higher insurance bills, higher utility bills, right? And a lot of land surrounding that house leads to a lot of time either you have to work to maintain it or you have to hire landscaping. And obviously the more land you do, the bigger those bills are too. So those are things that when you're looking at a house, just keep that stuff in mind. That's very important because you could be, you can find a house that fits all your needs and everything like that. It may not need to be as big or contain the acreage and things like that. And if the less of that stuff, the less of your utility costs, the less of your insurance, that stuff goes up. It doesn't go up incrementally. It's like it is up and to the right. You know what I mean? Like when you look at that cost analysis. So make sure that's that stuff that is really important to you, because it will dictate a heavy amount of your expenses.
Oh, for sure.
When your taxes, your insurance bill, right, your escrow, all of a sudden is like, whoa, that's like more than my mortgage payment. That that hurts a little bit, right? If you can keep those things down, that's a lot of savings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's those are great points, Bill. The other thing is within food, I think at first glance, grocery bill, like how do I save money there? I think there are ways to strategically, maybe buy in bulk. Costco, we've talked about Costco, BJ's, different places like that. What are your stances on, like just dining out? Eric, you mentioned dining out. These small wins. I know, there's saving money on the Starbucks latte and cooking, coffee at home. Maybe that's not how you do it, but maybe it is.
Yeah, the issue
lunch is up too. I would just,
oh, big time.
Like spending
the issue with
$15,
my
$20
wife and
on
I
lunch.
is, while it's just the two, our baby's still young, so we don't really have to cook for him. And then while it's just the two of us, dining out is obviously expensive, but the thing that we've been like ordering in a lot, like DoorDash or Uber Eats, but like by the time you go to the grocery store, buy all the food, spend time cooking it, all that kind of stuff, maybe you throw out a bunch of stuff you don't even use, it doesn't even save us that much money. Like it's almost like we need the numbers to like really generate the savings, because then buying the groceries like pays off versus ordering in or eating out.
I think I'm going to play devil's advocate there. I would say the average person can save a ton of money by not eating out, or getting lunches or Uber Eats or everything.
Yeah, 100%. Eric,
if you've
never been more wrong in your life than with that take right there.
Is it like,
how about that for a devil's advocate? You know what I mean? You can save a ton of money on food. You know what I mean? But like you said, it comes with a cost, and that cost is your time.
a lot of times too valuable. Come on.
But you're saying,
you got to speak for everyone.
There's definitely, and I think probably the number one way to do it is when you cook dinner, right? You cook enough for your lunch the next day. I think that's where when I see a lot of savings, that's where I see it, right? So I'll cook it.
Yeah.
And that way too, some people don't like having leftovers like for several days, which I totally agree with. Like, but if you can cook it and then you have your lunch the next day as well, I think that's a huge way to save. If you're not spending,
I love leftovers.
$15, $17, $20 on lunch, $12 on lunch. You know what I mean? And you can reduce that down to maybe your leftovers. I think that's a huge way. And I think also too that saves you time the next day, because the food's ready right there. Things like that. So you're talking about your time being money, Eric. There you go, right there. You save time and you save money.
I think it adds up. If you're in the CrossFit community, they call it boss prepping, right? So it's just food prepping, right? You're like, and it helps. Not only is it time saving, you're saving money. If exactly, all right, every single meal this week, I've got a piece of chicken, some rice, and a couple, maybe some veggies.
Right?
Healthier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
so
too, how many times are we at the office and we're like, "What do you want to eat? What do you want to eat? What do you want?"
It takes forever.
It's the biggest waste of time whenever we get to order food or anything like that. Spend like a half an hour between like getting everyone's stuff. If we are all ordering out or something like that, it's just And then you're hungry, so you're not thinking about work. You're like, you know what I mean? You're thinking about like, what am I gonna get? What is it gonna get here? What's the time?
No more lunches.
Not to shout out, but like when Adam would just be like, "Oh, I'll go pick it up," and then he would come back like, "I'm like, where are you? I'm so hungry." And you've been gone for 45 minutes on a 15-minute trip, So you know what I mean, stuff like that, right? And I feel like when you're thinking about other stuff, you're not doing work. And that's what I think happens. You know what I mean? So that's another thing. I think you gain some efficiency there, and you're ready to eat as soon as you're hungry. Boom, you just grab the food, go, and then you're back to work. you know,
Here's
that's
here's
Totally.
the calculation, Bill. It's so $12 for lunch times 260 work days a year. That's $3,000.
Yeah, put
Or-
that in
To be exact, 3,100. And then so okay, if let's say like if you prep a meal, it costs $5 a meal times 260 work days. That's 1,300. So you save about $2,000 a year.
Yeah, I
if
think
you're,
$12
prepping.
thing, at least where we are, that's just not true.
Yeah.
It's more than that. If I get something
yo.
at Kava, it's $15.
Yep.
So
Everything's
say
more than that.
let's say all right,
15.
let's do 15 then. Now your savings is 2,600.
And I think your cost per meal
Probably
is
even more.
high.
Delivery fee,
$5?
let's
No
say-
way. I think it's $2.
let's say-
No.
maybe.
It's
Yeah,
at
I
least
don't know
it's
about
$5.
that. That's yeah. Think about it. Yeah, you. If it's
I
like a
I know
salad,
that I can get $5. No,
Chicken.
$2.
Justin, if you
Let's-
get like a
I'm gonna
pound
get
of
it down to
chicken, you're paying
$2.
$2.
Yeah.
You have like a pound.
$2 a day. So yeah, you got
So
$10.
Justin eats just all chicken.
No, but
chicken.
seasoning
You
and
get chicken for $2 a pound. I've never seen that in my life.
Well, no, I have $10 for the week. Right? $2 a meal.
What do you
5
eat?
meals.
Rice and beans.
Yeah, you could do that. Rice, chicken, rice every day. Done.
that sounds like the
can't
saddest
get chicken
life
that
ever.
cheap. Chicken is not that cheap.
Well,
No,
maybe
I'm
not
telling
your
you,
organic chicken.
You can't get non-organic chicken for
I'm gonna
where
bring it
people-
up.
You get non-organic
Wegmans.
chicken for $1.09.
Chicken.
I don't know. What are you eating? Maybe a half pound to 3/4
Go
of a pound
to-
of chicken.
Well, let's chicken. We've got
Oh, this is great.
Great content.
There's no way you can get that. Don't even bother looking it up because you're wrong. You'll
$6
never
a pound. You could $6
Oh,
a pound.
so even more. Yeah. So there's no way that you can do it on $2 a day. That's an insane.
Well, you don't have
You're,
to eat
dude,
it.
you're thinking back to like when you were like in your early 20s.
You can't
like,
even
what
all
you
right.
live
all
on.
right,
So,
all right.
like,
Okay, fine.
It's
fine.
like 3 times
Okay,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Again,
So
this is
moving
a
on. We
huge
gotta
savings. Yeah, we gotta move on. But
We gotta move
this
on
isn't
here.
A huge savings, but there can be some savings.
I think there's a lot of ways you can save. Is my point.
Yeah, you gotta
Maybe
do
I'm
it
maybe I'm
many
not
different
maybe I'm being a little extreme, but I think there are. You've got, I think also subscription audit. That's the other piece. You know, you gotta
Huge.
you have to audit your subscriptions. The average household has $273 a month in subscriptions. So if you're not using it, cut it.
Oh yeah, looking at and especially too like looking at your cable bill, trying to pare that thing down because you don't use half the stuff. Cable puts like a ton of stuff on there. Get a bare bones package that gives you internet and bare bones cable,
Here's
and that what I mean can save
Yeah.
you some money.
here's a theory I have. You guys can tell me I'm totally wrong. I find that if I have some of these subscriptions, even these niche ones that we don't use as much, sometimes it keeps you on the couch and not, you're not going to go out to dinner because you have this show you're going to watch. Are you actually saving some money? That's a theory I have.
Some thinking there.
There you
Is
go.
it a
You sure? If all right, I'll
yeah.
I'll agree slightly because if you're replacing your going out to the movies 4 times a month or something with Netflix,
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
100%.
I do think
Okay.
too. One thing we didn't touch on was cars. Making sure that you don't get too expensive a car. I know it's nice to drive an expensive car.
Oh, yeah.
But that's one thing that could save you a lot of money. Again, that doesn't just save you on the cost of the car, but if you're financing it, saves you on interest. Your insurance bill is lower with a cheaper car. That's another thing, right? Because it's the total value of the car that you're insuring against. So your actual insurance costs are going to be less. So that's something that you can, really think about. So even if it's, you're going from a 40,000 to a 25,000, a 25,000 to a 15,000, 100,000 to a $70,000 car, there are big savings there that you should be looking at. So that's a big thing. Then looking at your insurance costs, right? Making sure that you're speaking with your insurance agent saying, hey, is there anything we can be doing here? Should I be changing my deductible? Should I be changing,
Yes.
one thing that
That's a
saved me
huge
a
one.
lot of money is I would actually raise my, especially now, homeowners insurance, right? You do something wrong, they clip you anyway. So it's like, raise your deductible because you're really not going to put as many claims in as, you might have in the past.
Yeah.
Because they'll just they'll clip you. They'll just say, "Hey, we're not renewing. Sorry." You know what I mean?
Oh, it
You
happened to me.
You put a claim in,
Mm.
right? So raise your deductible because you're going to want it for the big thing that happens, right? That's what you're really paying for. So raise your deductible. That's going to bring down your cost significantly. You know,
So true, Bill. That
so
happened to me. I claimed it 3 times because
yeah,
I had a
make
low
sure you have
deductible.
a good relationship with your property and casualty insurer. You know, that's I think especially that's why it's really great to have an independent agent and not kind of like some of these big box insurance companies that they can really delve in and save you some money, right? So if they save you $1,000, $2,000, 500, 750, whatever it is, right? That's a big amount of money.
Oh, that's real savings. All right, so just to recap everything, give people a 90-day kind of plan here to audit everything. You've got week 1, I'd say, you guys, I want you to jump in here, but track every expense just to understand a baseline where you're at. Consider a high yield savings account if you don't have one, just for short term money. We discussed that. Negotiate, both your income and your expenses. What you just said, Bill. Your insurance rates, various other things like that. Month 2, so that's kind of everything in month 1 right away. Month 2, we've got salary negotiation, kind of putting that into play, launching I don't know. We discussed side income. Maybe that makes sense for some people. Maybe it doesn't. Else that people need to do right away, just as a recap. Bill, what do you think?
No, I think that once you get those things on track, don't be afraid to look at, as opposed to just doing money markets and things like that. Maybe start to look at maybe a dividend income strategy in a stock. So that way you're not only getting some. First of all, those stocks have lower volatility, right, than the rest of the market typically. But if you start to maybe once your emergency savings gets to a good point, you may then say, "Hey, I'm going to start putting a little bit more in these dividend-paying stocks that will hopefully then give you a good rate of return in terms of what they're paying out from a payout from the dividend." But then also, as the market appreciates, right, you're going to get some capital appreciation there too. So that's, I think, that's a big
Yeah,
thing to look at, right? Once you've kind of got your baseline, right, you think about building a house, you want to make sure that the basement, the infrastructure, right, is all set up good, right? So you have your cash flow set up well, you have your insurances, you have your emergency savings and things like that. Then you can start building up, right, and getting the good accumulation. So those are things you can be doing.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get into it. This week, we're going to dive into one of our portfolio holdings. Again, this is just informational, entertainment purposes only. We're not, saying that there's no guarantee of future growth here. But one of our holdings, Vistra Energy. Eric, can we take us through Vistra? I know, for everyone, it is a retail electrical power generation company. They're based in Texas and largest competitive power generator in the U.S. But when did we buy it? What were we thinking? Why did we buy it? How's it doing?
Yep. Yeah, we bought it in December of 2022. It's been our best performing utility, and it's not even close. It's up like 700%. Whereas a lot of the traditional utilities we own, they're up like 30, 20, or 40%. And what's this amazing growth off the back of? Oh, AI data centers. Basically, they're
Nuclear power.
a lot of it is a projection that they're going to get similar deals with big tech companies like Constellation Energy's had, where these big tech companies are going to guarantee that they have power generation in the future, nuclear power generation, and they'll pay a significant premium. It's like a 50% premium for that power. So we've seen a big run up in Vistra. We don't own Constellation, but that's another one. Another one's like Talon Energy.
Mm-hmm.
But traditionally, our utilities portfolio, and this is historic tradition too, is it's usually the least volatile. You kind of want to own utilities. It's generates consistent income, and then you supplement that with your riskier growth portfolio, but the utilities have traditionally been the safer stock. So it's been really nice for us and our clients that they've gotten this bump as well. Really, like the past couple of years, it's been a growth portfolio in a sense. But I mean, a company like Vistra signing these long-term deals, we view that as something very safe, right? They're guaranteeing that they're going to have a client going forward. Especially that when that guarantee is coming from big tech companies, which have monopolies, and their revenue is what's going to be paying for that power, makes them even safer in our mind.
For sure. Yeah, and Bill, what do we still like it, the stock overall? What are your thoughts today as it sits?
Yeah, I mean, so it's still, looking back, right? We originally invested in it, and because it met our criteria of a utility stock that was going to be growing their dividend in the next 12 months. It was also doing a lot of stock buyback, right? So they're from their cash flow, so they were reducing the amount of shares outstanding, which is a great way to see capital appreciation in any stock. And so that was kind of originally why we were invested it. It had some nuclear within its portfolio. That has since increased, right, significantly. So they've bought a few nuclear companies and things like that, and now they kind of operate in Texas, Pennsylvania, Ohio, where they have a few different nuclear facilities that they're working with. They did have some acquisitions and things like that. Because of that, right, they've done really well, right, when you look at the AI center demand and things like that. Now, going forward, right, currently, they do have a high PE price to earnings, right, for a utility company. So that, is something, but they're generating a lot of cash flow. And they are, like I was saying, there's going to be a lot of stock buybacks. So they're still authorized to do another 1.5 billion worth of stock buybacks in 2025, and that will obviously reduce the amount of shares outstanding, which will hopefully then bring down the price to earnings ratio. There's a lot of good things going on there.
Do we like stock buybacks as a whole, just for people listening, or how do people interpret that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, think about it this way: the company feels that the stock is undervalued. Right, in a capacity, so they want to buy back so that those shares are outstanding. So that way, as earnings increase, that you're going to see that capital appreciation. Ideally, right? Yeah, we love stock.
You
buybacks.
Love that.
Yeah, of course. As an investor, you love to see that.
Cool. All right. Anything else for Vistra as the show today?
Yeah,
Any final thoughts.
Just to piggyback on what Bill was talking about, the big nuclear asset they have is Comanche Peak, which is close to 40% of their nuclear generation.
That's the Texas one, right?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Yep. And one of the research from Wolf, they're saying they think there's a high probability that Vistra is able to get even more significant premium on Comanche Peak. So it just depends. What is it? Meta has got the Constellation Energy deal. Amazon's got the Talon Energy deal. Who's going to come in with Vistra? Well, we have to wait and see. But all the analysts think there's a high probability that some big tech's gonna finalize a deal with them.
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine a lot of those big tech companies are going to have to do it with multiple.
Yeah.
Right. Constellation's not going to be able to meet the need for everything that they do. Right. So they're going to have to.
Yeah, for sure.
Have multiple these AI data centers are going to be all around the United States, and they're going to be, whoever's operating, you know what I mean, some of those plants.
Yep.
They're going to do well, right? Because they want to get those deals in place when they get that constant stream of energy to support those AI data centers.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up another show of Wealth Wisdom. If you're listening, thank you so much for listening. Stick with us. Like, follow, subscribe. This is not supported by ads of the growth of this show. We do it to provide value for you at home listening to increase your future financial journey and overall financial health. So if you've found value in today's show, be a good friend, share it with a friend, and we will see you next time, next Friday.
Right. Thanks, guys.